I think we're going to have to start referring to Fayetteville as Lexington West because there's another Kentucky Wildcat following John Calipari to Arkansas.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. Happy Tuesday to you. I'm your host today, Isaac Shade, and you're joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch. I want to remind you that every episode is able to be found ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all you everydayers out there, as well as all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord community. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Coming up on the show today, we got some Arkansas news to talk about, both incoming and outgoing. And then we also got to join Mr. Cam Stewart, the host of Baylor, looking at Norchad Omier joining Scott Drew's Bears. We'll get to all of that. But first, here's my conversation with John Neighbors from Locked On Razorbacks. Little crossover action here on a Tuesday between Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Razorbacks, which, John Neighbors, I've always wished it was Locked On Hogs. Welcome in. It's good to be together talking about yet another signing for Coach John Calipari. What a wild month plus it's been in Fayetteville, Arkansas. John Neighbors, on Monday, we got the news middle of the afternoon that Adou Thiero, who had a Final Five of Kentucky, Arkansas, Indiana, Pittsburgh, and North Carolina, commits to the Hogs. How big is this? How did Cal pull this off when it seemed like it was down to Pittsburgh and North Carolina?
I mean, I'm just going to give you the basic answer that everybody else just throws at me. It's the chicken man. It's Tyson Chicken. You know, it's the NIL. It's everything. But man, it's been so much fun to see how Calipari, first off, that he's the coach at Arkansas, it's the most absurd thing ever, still to this day. But being able to see Arkansas not only get high quality players out of high school, but then high quality players out of the transfer portal. I think I saw latest deal was 24/7 Sports at Arkansas is the number one transfer portal class. I think number 6 in high school. So this has just been kind of what Razorback fans were hoping when you get a coach like Calipari. If it's true that Calipari's coming in, if it's true that they have as much NIL money as what people are throwing out there and it's being reported, then these are the type of results that you need to be seeing. And so far, the players that they've gotten, the roster they've formulated, it's really hard not to get way too excited already, even though they still have another 6 scholarship players to sign. So still a lot of room left, but it's been a wild time, but it's been so much fun.
Dude, yeah, I mean, it's got to be, because I know you and I have talked offline since Coach Cal has come in, but this is the first time we've talked on either of our shows. And it's been so much fun to watch from afar. For those who don't know, John lives there in the Fayetteville area recently. How long have you been there since you moved from Little Rock?
Well, I guess, man, just like 4 months, 4.5 months. But yeah, I mean, this is my hometown. This is where I grew up at.
That's
so
right.
I feel like it's still home. But yeah, it's been not even a half a year yet.
Yeah, that's wild. So John's down there. I live just about an hour and a half north in Joplin, Missouri area. And so it's just wild seeing in like our neck of the woods the impact that Coach Cal has had in such a short amount of time. I mean, it's pretty freaking cool. And John, you mentioned, I mean, this is the second former Kentucky Wildcat to head to Arkansas, joining Big Z Zvonimir Ivisic, whose brother, by the way, on Monday committed to Illinois, but also 3 of the freshman 2024 commits that were committed to Kentucky, Karter Knox, Billy Richmond, and Boogie Fland, all come to Fayetteville as well. What does that say to you, John, about Coach Cal's ability to recruit and retain these guys, even in the midst of a job switch?
Well, I think it just goes to show just why he's the best at what he does in recruiting. I mean, the guy, it's so funny. I had to delete so many tweets of all the horrible things I said about him when he was at Kentucky and even at Memphis. And I don't think I was alone in that. Like, Razorback fans had to do the same thing. And I've always felt like with someone like him, and anybody, but you don't hate somebody you don't know. And the reason that you know who Calipari is because of how incredible he is as a coach and the type of players he's brought in and the type of talent he's always brought in and the social and cultural significance that he is to the college basketball landscape.
Right.
I mean, you're seeing the ripple effect of what he has meant. I've tried to really rationalize it in the way of when the coaching search originally happened and Eric Musselman decided to leave to go to USC, names like Chris Beard was getting thrown around. And from my understanding, Chris Beard was all but here. Like it was going to happen, but then some stuff happened late, ended up changing it. And, people were like, man, we start hearing like Jerome Tang or some other guys. It wasn't really moving the needle for anybody necessarily. There could be some potential there, but
sure. Both great basketball coaches, right?
Yeah.
But not the cachet of Cal, as you're alluding to.
Yeah, it was just nowhere close to what he was going to be able to provide. And then once he got hired, I mean, it was the biggest story in college sports. It was the biggest story in sports in general. I mean, it was just that much of a bombshell. But I think every fan, as excited as they were, they're like, okay, now that he's here, let's see if the money can go where the mouth is. Are they going to be able to bring in the same type of talent that he could at Kentucky? And I think that question has been answered. So it's almost sometimes I have to pinch myself and live in a reality of like, Calipari's at Arkansas. And some people may look at it as like, oh, well, they're only going to Arkansas because of Calipari. I think Razorback fans are saying, so I'm by us. Like, we don't care if they're, bleed Razorback red. Like, hey, they're going to be putting on that Razorback jersey and they're going to be playing in front of Bud Walton Arena.
That's right.
That's what fans care about. So,
because guess what? These guys, it's like a pitcher or a baseball player, for example, signing a 1-year deal, right? Yeah. They're playing for a contract. They got to show that they're worthy of it. And all these guys that want to get to the NBA, they don't care if they're at Arkansas or Kentucky or North Dakota State. They want to get seen wherever they're playing.
That's right. And that's what they're doing at Arkansas. Because here's the thing, like, to be totally honest about it, I'm not trying to sit here and say that Arkansas is on the same level of a program college basketball wise as Kentucky. But Arkansas is still a pretty dadgum good program. And they have a lot of history. And they're this is one of my favorite things to say. It's one of the few programs that has had now 3 Hall of Fame coaches coaching them, with Eddie Sutton, Nolan Richardson, and now John Calipari, not to mention Eric Musselman, who's, I don't think he'll be a Hall of Famer just because of his jumping around and everything, but still a pretty dadgum good coach.
Yeah.
So it's like Calipari, it's the best thing for everybody. He gets a new reset. He gets to go in a situation at Arkansas where obviously the NIL is very high and there's been a huge commitment made to the basketball program, and he gets a fresh start and kind of just to rejuvenate himself and rejuvenate that energy. And, they got everything that they needed at Arkansas to win a national championship. So it's just been awesome to see how it's actually transpired and to be able to be getting the players that you're having on visits. They're not going to get every single player, but they've been having a pretty high batting average of getting most of the guys that they've really wanted.
Look at us getting 2 baseball references in here. I love it, John. I know that you and I are both baseball guys, so that's great. Well, speaking of, I mean, there's more guys to talk about here, and I think we need to do that in just a second because we've only talked about Kentucky guys that have come in. We haven't talked about the other massive portal additions. I'd really like to hear from you what a starting 5 would look like today, what's left to be done, because there are some Hogs out the door that committed elsewhere. In fact, on Monday, along with, I want to hear from you where the Hogs sit in the SEC hierarchy right now. So we got to get to some more of those questions, and we'll do all that in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode's brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. John, how about some college basketball national championship odds for 2025? Kansas plus 1,000. UConn plus 1,100, Duke plus 1,200, Alabama plus 1,500, Baylor, North Carolina, Houston, and Gonzaga all plus 1,800. Further down that list are the Hogs. Folks, FanDuel hasn't caught up yet. Take advantage of it while you can. I'm just telling you. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Isaac Shade, John Neighbors here. It's a little crossover action between Locked On Razorbacks, Locked On College Basketball. And we want to continue talking about what all Arkansas has done because it's absolutely wild. John, we've mentioned the 5 guys that have come over from Kentucky, but we haven't mentioned the guy that to many was the number 1 transfer player in this class, John L. Davis, coming from FAU, and then Jonas Adou, a player who Hogs fans know well from Tennessee, joining Zvonimir Ivisic in that front court. John, this is a class, man. This is loaded. What do you make of those 2 guys coming in as well?
Well, honestly, when I was looking at here at Natty State Sports, we had a portal big board that we were putting together of all the players that we'd really like to see, ones that were actually interested and ones that maybe got offered, whatever it was. And I remember we were talking about some of the players that we really liked the most. And honestly, like John L. Davis was number 1 and Jonas Adou was probably number 2 or number 3. I mean, that was the type of guys that you wanted on your team. And to see Arkansas get both of them is pretty incredible. Now, both of them have their own ways of being competitive and looking good, but the John L. Davis thing is something I'm excited about him. I mean, the dude was, what was it, 18 points a game last year? I think 6.5 rebounds. He had 3 assists, hit 44% from 3. And not to mention that the fact that he has an experience of getting to the Final Four as a player. So from what I understand and looking at scouting reports and hearing from people, he's just one of those guys that late in the game, hey, if you need a bucket, just give him the ball. He'll figure it out. Right. And so like getting a guy like that on your team and being under Cal and knowing that, he's trying to get to that next level has been incredible. And then not to mention Jonas Adou, this player on the Tennessee team that was arguably the best SEC team all season long and made it to the Elite 8 and started every single game for them. So yeah, you like to get good players out of the portal no matter what. But when you're talking about getting the right fit, getting experienced guys, I mean, that's where these are guys that can step right in and make an immediate impact. And then you're not going to have to worry about the transitional phase or getting warmed up. Like I'm sure there will be a little bit of that, but these are guys that have been there before and they're really good. And I think they're the perfect fit for Calipari.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Adou going to the Elite 8. John L. Davis was a starter on a Final Four team, man. I mean, it's just insane, and that helps take some of the pressure off of as talented as Boogie Fland is and Karter Knox and Billy Richmond. It really does take a lot of pressure off of them, to perform at such a crazy high level as quickly, and they can just slot right in wherever it makes most sense. And I think that's where I want to go next, John. If this team had to play a basketball game today, who would you roll out as your first 5?
Well, they have 7, so it should be too hard to put it together. But
so it's easier to say who's on the bench for
yeah. Let's say who's coming off the bench for them. Well, I think just both guys that we mentioned already, John L. Davis and Jonas Adou. Those are going to be the guys that definitely looking at being the starters. And after that, I'm thinking the high school class is always tough. All those players are really good, but I think Boogie Fland and Billy Richmond are going to be also the other 2 guys that are there. So having those, and then I'm kind of torn. Like it's tough because you got talented guys. I'd like to say Big Z, but
that's a tough front court with both him and Adou together. That's why I worry about that.
And that's kind of where I'd probably be leaning towards. And Karter Knox, nothing gets him. I mean, he's still a 5-star player, but if I'm having to pick between all those guys, I mean, I'd probably throw him in. I know Thiero will get plenty of a run as long as he stays healthy. Like that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the matchup, but I'd love to see that backcourt and see the front court. See both of them, but I don't know. I'll probably go with those guys as of right now. And yeah, I just have some other 5-star McDonald's All-Americans or some really great players come off the bench too. That helps.
I mean, it's never a bad problem to have, John. Well, and to that point, all right, we got 7 dudes. In college basketball, for those who don't know, you get 13 scholarships. So there's 6 more out there. John, I know in this transfer portal era, most coaches aren't using all 13 anymore because they don't want dudes on the end of the bench like, all right, where am I going in the portal in 10 months time, right? Like, so I know Coach Cal probably won't use all 6 of those, but what's left to do? What do you still think the Hogs need?
Well, basically, they're looking at a point guard because we know that they got plenty of talent from backcourt, front court, everything. But to get a true legitimate point guard that can run the offense, be the quarterback of it, distribute the ball, it's always something that everybody wants, but that's kind of the direction that they need to go. I know that they've had some other options that they've been looking at out of the transfer portal. Guys that they're either going to be potentially hosting for a visit or whatever. People are wondering about, okay, what about DJ Wagner? Is he going to be in the mix? Player at Kentucky. Could he be somebody that's there? But, overall, I think that it's got to be a point guard. You got to get somebody that can do that and make everybody better. And I think that's something Razorback fans are really excited about too, because they've had some really good players come through Arkansas. But to get a true distributing point guard who runs the offense and is kind of the leader on that court is something that you've had some good players, but never one that's truly been to that level.
That's right.
So if they can figure out somebody to put in that spot, I mean, it's going to be hard pressed to think that this Arkansas team won't be capable of at least making it to the Final Four if they're able to get a really talented guy at the point guard position.
John, that's right where I go with it too, because it's like you look at John L. Davis, he can do it, but he's really more of a shooting guard. And like Boogie is a good combo guard, but it's like, again, the reliance on the freshman to lead a team in that way. It's like, I just don't know how comfortable I am with that. And there's enough highly skilled talent at all the other four positions with good depth that if there was a ringleader to run this thing that understood what Cal's trying to accomplish, man, that's what you need. And that's what I'd be looking for as well. I'm right with you there. And what's funny about that is obviously you want to land more than just one more, but to me, you really just need an 8-man rotation in college basketball. You want more for depth and injuries and other stuff. But if you get that point guard, I don't know that there's a ton much more that you need to do beyond that.
No. And that's, I think, what probably Calipari and his staff are looking at. Yeah, they're going to add more players and they want to get good players, but I think they're going to be going all in on just adding that type of player. So, I know there's options out there, and I know that, there's guys that they may like more so than others. But overall, man, I just feel like what they're doing and trying to address a lot of the needs and formulate it and fit it. And you mentioned the 8-man rotation. That's something that I think some people may forget sometimes. It's not like the old Nolan Richardson days of 40 minutes of hell where you have to have 11 players out there to run up and down the court and everything. It's like, no, you need 7, 8 at the most that are high quality guys you can count on, and then you go and win that way. So I think that, say if I don't know exactly what name that you would want to put on it, but say if they go out there and they get an elite level point guard, yeah, I'm with you. Like, I don't know what else that they need for people to start thinking.
Maybe another shooter, but it's like,
I mean, that would help. I mean, you can never have too many shooters. But as far as every other position group, every other need, I don't know how you don't roll that team out there with just those 8 guys and then add in a couple other ones to help out in depth or in foul trouble or whatever, and say, yeah, this is a team that not only could be one of the best teams in the SEC, but one of the best teams in the country that could compete for a championship.
Well, that's a perfect segue you've made, John Neighbors, because I think that's what I want to know is us to process. Again, if the season started today, I know Alabama's just added a crud ton themselves. Where do the Hogs sit both in SEC hierarchy, and where would you put them nationally as well?
Well, in the SEC, I guess you're referring to this upcoming season or just in general?
Let's say this upcoming season specifically.
Okay. Well, this upcoming season, I think right now, I mean, you have to see how the whole roster plays out, but I don't have any reason in believing that Arkansas is not at least in the top 2, no worse than top 3. I know that Alabama's done some good things. Tennessee is always going to be tough no matter what, because Rick Barnes is there. Auburn, it seems like they're good, but then, they win the SEC tournament, but then lose in the NCAA tournament. So who really knows where they're at? But I think that that's kind of like the big 4 now of the SEC is Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, and Auburn. Yeah. And I think between those 4, those are probably going to be, if I was to do the SEC Media Days voting, those would be the top 4 that I put into the mix. But heading into this year, though, I would say Arkansas, I'll put them at number 2 right now, potentially being at number 1, because again, there's just a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving pieces to see what all these teams look like when they have a finalized roster. But if I put them in there and looking at it from the national landscape, I'm going to say they're top 10. I mean, I really am, because Calipari is able to add that. Now, you got to go out and win games. Like, that's something that I know these Kentucky fans have just been trying and trolling so hard, trying to act like they're not disappointed in their in their trade that they have for coaching. But they're always like, oh, we'll get ready to lose in the first round of the tournament. It's like, okay, maybe, but Calipari at Kentucky averaged 12, I think it was 12-6, 13-5 in SEC play on average. And so that alone right there is going to put you into the mix of being one of the top teams in the SEC. And knowing what the non-conference schedule looks like and knowing kind of what he's done and the talent level and his assistants that he brought in. I mean, getting Kenny Payne back. I know he wasn't a great head coach, but I think he's going to be a great assistant.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, and in fact, that's what I try to bring up is like, not saying it's directly correlated, but the best years Kentucky ever had was when Kenny Payne was the assistant under Calipari. And once he left, it's when things didn't go so well. So not trying to say it's that for sure, but it would be an element of it. But the point is, nationally, I still believe Arkansas is going to be, when preseason comes around, everything, they're going to be a team that's going to be preseason top 10, and it's justified. I feel like you'd probably be hard pressed to find a more talented roster when it's all said and done, top to bottom, than what Arkansas is going to have, especially NBA talent. So, yeah, right now I'm putting them in top 10 and top 2 and nationally and SEC respectively.
And we want to see that for the Hogs, man. This past season was so frustrating for me for the Hogs. So disappointing. And so you want that rebound. Also, how interesting that in that top 4, there was no mention of Kentucky in the SEC top 4. Gonna be very interesting to see what Mark Pope can put together in year 1 in Lexington, and cannot wait. I love that FanDuel also has Coach Cal futures of what happens when these two teams play next year. I can't wait to see that. John, last thing I guess we need to talk about is also on Monday, 2 former Hogs we just mentioned last year committed elsewhere. Layden Blocker is going to DePaul, the class of the Big East. No, I'm just kidding. DePaul didn't win a single conference game last year. And then Devo Davis is off to the Big 12, where he'll play for Oklahoma State, who also had a very rough year last year. What do you make of that, John?
Yeah, it's almost like there's a direct connection or something like that. You know, it's like, I think, what was it, DePaul and Missouri were the only 2 teams that went over
in the Big Power 6. Yep.
So one great, but here, listen, you're going to have that happen when you have coaching changes and all of that. And there's some people that may have a grudge or may not be like, see you later type stuff. Because also, Caleb Battle goes to Gonzaga. That just here over the weekend is when he committed. So here's the thing: you wish him nothing but the best of luck, except when you're playing against your team. But it also, to be honest, something like with Devo just been in Arkansas for 4 years, and he just kind of wore out the welcome. Sometimes you're just at a place too long, kind of like what Calipari was at Kentucky. It's like you did a lot of great things, but it's just kind of time to move on and it was that time. And Layden Blocker, I've always, like, a lot of Razorback fans were clamoring for him to play. We had him here at Natty State. He was a really great kid, a great interview, and again, wish him nothing but the best of luck. But sometimes when you see where these guys end up in their next stop, kind of shows you maybe why they weren't playing as much, or maybe why they weren't, being the player that you thought they would be. It's not just because the coach hates them or because there's some sort of political thing. Sometimes it's just maybe they're not to the level that you expect them to be or that they needed to be. So again, it's not an insult to them, but that's what the transfer portal's for, is to go and find their spot. So again, I wish nothing but the best of luck. I think Layden Blocker is a player that has a lot of upside. He's only was a true freshman this past year. I think he's got a lot of upside that maybe he could kind of develop at DePaul. And with Devo, I have no problem with Devo, but I think Devo is this is his final year. He was trying to find a spot on a major college program that could just kind of make his final year great, and be able to maybe help him out with some NIL too. And he took some visits. I think FAU was actually one place they took a visit to, but Oklahoma State, maybe that's a place you can kind of go in and fit in and get it going.
A lot of games
from Fayetteville, I think. So yeah, I mean, wish them both nothing but the best luck, all the former transfers. But this kind of just shows you where Calipari was going with his team and the type of players that he wanted on his roster too.
Yeah, a little bit different there. Oklahoma State not going to win many games in the Big 12, I would imagine, this year. No. Well, folks, on the Locked On College basketball side of things, we got to move along to talking about some Baylor, because they just landed a big man from Miami on Sunday, Mr. Norchad Omier. That means big things for Scott Drew's team. Scott Drew, who almost went to Lexington, by the way. We'll get to talking about that in just a second. Right after I tell you about Monopoly Go. All right, hang on. Timeout. Game off. We got to pause here and talk more about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying. Look, Shade, flag on the play. You guys have already been talking about this so much. John, they're all tired of us talking about it, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. We got to say more. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more prizes you unlock. And there's so many of those to get. Unique stickers you can trade with a friend to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton of those include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the couch. Go download it now for free on Google Play or on the App Store. Game on. Well, apparently Norchad Omier really likes the color green because he's headed from Miami to Waco, Texas, along with a fellow ACC member who we talked about previously, Mr. Jeremy Roach. We're joined again today by our good buddy, Mr. Cam Stewart, the host of Locked on Baylor. Cam, this is great news for Scott Drew. I love it. I'm excited for it. The Bears miss out on Adou, Cliff Omori, others. How does it feel to lock in a big?
Oh, man, it's great news. And honestly, if you hadn't mentioned him in the open, it would have been made for my great line, which was, I was as excited about this Omier. I haven't been this excited about a transfer portal commitment since Jeremy Roach. How about that?
We can fix that. Let's fix it. Here you go. Cam Stewart, how excited are you about this Norchad Omier news?
Oh my God, Isaac. It's the most excited I've been about a transfer portal commit since Jeremy Roach, which was like 3 weeks ago. This incredible. Is awesome. No. It is awesome. I mean,
very seriously, what does Omier's addition bring to the Bears?
It feels pretty close to the final piece of the puzzle. Now, I do think Baylor is going to bring in one, maybe two more guys here. Like, I mean, they've got, I think, 3 slots from my math, and you know, they needed a center and they needed a wing, and Norchad Omier gives you a little bit of both, actually. But then you got to worry about the depth. So I was saying on my show, like, you know, yeah, Omier could play some small ball big. Like, he can play some small ball 5. I wouldn't be surprised to see that at all this year. But if either he or Josh Ojambuna gets hurt, then you're back to square one and you don't have any centers, which is where we were a couple days ago. But I just love what he brings. You know, you and I had talked about Cliff Omori, and I know that's someone you looked into a lot, and Adou to a little bit of extent as well. But Omori, what I loved is just brings a tenacity with him, right? Like, ultra good rebounder, shot blocker, gets in that grit and grime, which Baylor has not had the last couple of years. And Mark Vital was a guy I think of. He was crucial to that national championship team. And with Norchad Omier, you have that. Like, he brings all of that. He's played 4 seasons of college basketball, and he has led his conference in offensive rebound percentage 4 times. He's been an all-conference player 4 times. He has been the defensive rebounding percentage leader in his conference 3 of the 4 years. So he's at 6'7", you're like, that's not our big, but right. What he does is he brings you the things that a big needs to bring. You know, I think back to Mark Vital, you had this, you know, plays over his size, kind of gritty, tough, defensive minded, and great offensive rebounder. You put that next to a Flo Thamba, who is okay as a center, but nothing to write home about. Like, you can get away with a lot. You can play Baylor's brand of basketball and still play some pretty good defense while still having that. So that's what I think Norchad Omier gives you. And like the Jeremy Roach signing, Isaac, I was honestly, I didn't even think about Omier because I didn't think that Baylor was in on a guy like this. I thought the same thing about Roach. I was like, of course that makes perfect sense. I just didn't expect it, but this is what we're living in now. Baylor's got NIL going well. Scott Drew is Scott Drew, and the program speaks for itself. And we're getting some of the best guys out there.
And I loved both of those because I feel like Cam, so often in both high school recruiting and transfer portal recruiting, we're all following it and we're all in on the minutia and who they follow on Instagram and whose Twitter tweets are liking. And then you get kind of a surprise like this, and it's like, yeah, let's get it right now. Like, let me add a statistical fun thing to all that you just said about Norchad Omier. Cam, you might be aware of this, maybe not. In the past 2 seasons in the ACC, precisely 2 players have averaged a double-double in both of those seasons.
Can I guess the other one?
Please.
Is it your man Armando Bacot?
It is. It's my man Armando Bacot and Norchad Omier. Literally the only 2 players to average a double-double each of the last 2 seasons in the ACC. And in fact, there was only one other instance of a player in the ACC averaging a double-double those past years. And so, folks, as Cam just said, do not mistake a lack of size for lack of impact with Omier, because this, like, he's not exactly the same as DJ Burns from NC State this past year, other than in that undersized, like, don't mistake what he can do. And frankly, he's a much better rebounder than DJ Burns is, clearly averaging a double-double. And so I think this is a massive addition for you guys, Cam. And so let me ask you this. I know you said it seems right now like there's probably some more pieces to add to the puzzle, to the mix for Baylor. But if the season started today, what would your lineup prediction be for Baylor?
Well, first I got to say I love that stat you pulled out, because like that's so Baylor. Everybody in the country, all the casuals know who Armando Bacot is, right? They should. He's a tremendous player. And to have someone who's on that statistical plane, who's played in the Final Four, like that not, I mean, of course, many college basketball fans know him, but to kind of sneak out with that is incredible. But looking at this lineup right now, the tough part is the backcourt, right? And so I'm just going off a limb. I'm going 3-guard set. Saw a lot of that in 2020, 2021, 2022. So I'm looking at a Jeremy Roach. I'm looking at a VJ Edgecombe, and I'm sticking with a Jaden Nunn. I think there's going to be lots of shouts for Langston Love, who was going to be the 6th man of the year in the Big 12 before he got hurt. There's going to be a lot of shouts for Rob Wright, one of the best point guards in the entire country, coming in as a freshman. But I look at those 3. None started every game for Baylor last year. I look at those 3, and right now I've got Josh Ojambwina at center and straight up power forward Norchad Omier, man. And we're rolling. And we're rolling to probably a top 5, top 8 preseason ranking with that. But I don't think they're done. But you asked for today.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying.
May 7th.
This is a snapshot in time as we even peek behind the curtain. As we record, it's Monday, May 6th, 10:25 Eastern Standard Time, 2024 in the year of our Lord. But Cam, like what's interesting to me about that is Omier has played the 5 at Miami the past 2 years. I'm in like some of these guys that are like more traditional centers, you couldn't slide over to the 4. Omier's skill set to me translates very well that way. And I'm really curious, especially with the 3-guard lineup around him, of how that happens. And then what I love about it is regardless of that 5-man guard rotation, you got 2 dudes coming off the bench for Baylor. And so I love that depth even beyond that starting 5. And
by the way, a top 50 guy coming in on the wing as well off the bench, Jason Asamoto, who's kind of a guy that gets forgotten about because he's not high up as Wright and Edgecombe, but a guy who could shoot. And so you kind of bring in a different kind of forward when you come in with him. Yeah. I'm contractually obligated to stand up for him. He's a Massachusetts guy.
Honestly, I'm a big Jason Asamoto fan, so I'm so glad you brought him in to this. But so Cam, you said like, hey, as you see it, top 5, top 8 preseason. And honestly, you could be top 8 and be 4th or 5th best in the Big 12. That's where things are at right now. That's how wild the top end of this league is going to be next year. And so, Cam, if you had to stack up, not even nationally, just Big 12, where would you put Baylor in the Big 12 mix ahead of next year?
Honestly, I mean, you could be top 5 and be 4th in the Big 12. And I think preseason anyway. And honestly, I'm seeing them as a 4th right now, which might peeve some Baylor fans a little bit. But I just think of, Kansas, obviously with the additions, they could be preseason number 1. Houston, I think there is a bit of feast or famine with Houston, which is going to seem weird, but they bring back basically everyone but Shed. And I think Shed is no hot take here, a huge part of that operation. And so that could, they could just kind of pick up where they leave off, and because they got a great coach and some great players that have been playing together for years, but they could slide. I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but they could slide. And Iowa State, I think people forget about because they didn't make huge additions like some of the other teams like Kansas and Baylor have, but that's a really solid basketball team right there. So right now I have them at 4th. But I mean, I think those top 4 are in like a top tier. I think each of those 4 teams can win the Big 12.
That's right. And we're not even naming Arizona, which
right.
Folks, let's remember, this is part of the Big 12. Like it's stupid, Cam. I love it and I can't wait. Now, last thing, and then we'll get you out of here. After the Big 12 semifinals, I remember sitting downstairs at the press conference with Scott Drew, and I forget who, but also Caleb Loner. And I remember seeing this dude talking about how excited he was for the NCAA tournament and everything that was coming ahead of him. But now, Caleb Loner is transferring within the Big 12 to Utah. He's going to be a great Ute, Cam Stewart.
Yeah.
But not on the basketball court. My man Caleb Loner is going to play football for the Utah Utes. What do you make of this wild turn?
Well, there's there's 2 wild things to it, right? First, he's just making the switch to football, which we'll obviously talk about. The second thing is, before he came to Baylor, he played at BYU. And so now you've got BYU and Utah on your resume, which I think is very interesting.
With a little Baptist squeezed in the middle.
Right. That rivalry's a bloodbath, man. BYU, Utah, they do not like each other at all. So that's the weird part. But I would say this, when you saw him at the podium, because I've had this thought before, when I see the Baylor basketball team out there and I say, okay, one of these guys has to play football, I'll probably pick a Caleb Loner. Like he's big, he's broad-shouldered. He did have some problems at times corralling rebounds, using 2 hands. So that'll be interesting for a guy who's going to go play tight end. But September 7th, Baylor at Utah on the gridiron. So you could have a year where you play Caleb Loner in football and then again in basketball because he is going to try it. So I think that's wild. But look, all the power to him. We're rooting for Caleb, except when he plays against Baylor.
Cam, this is what makes the transfer portal awesome. I can't wait to see it. Really, really curious to see how all these pieces fit in Waco, bringing in Jeremy Roach, bringing in Norchad Omier, a whole host of uberly talented freshmen.
I might have to change my prediction. I might put them to like 2nd because we just keep talking about them and I'm so bought in.
I love that you're
all Kansas and them and everyone else.
I love that I'm getting you there, Cam. Let's go. Folks, for Cam Stewart, Isaac Shade, Cam, thanks so much for joining us. Have a good one. Big thanks to both John Neighbors of Locked On Razorbacks and Cam Stewart from Locked On Baylor for joining today to unpack these newest additions to their teams. Man, big things happening in both Fayetteville and Waco. Keep your eyes on both what they do in the SEC and Big 12. If you're not already part of the Locked On College Basketball Discord community, we'd love to have you. It's free to join. The link's available in the show notes. If you haven't subscribed to the show on audio and video, do that. Super easy to do. As always, apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats. And until tomorrow, peace.